Today, we're talking about empowering employees to speak up and breaking the silence against toxic leadership. And oh my gosh, this topic is so timely. How many of you have, been in a situation where you've been impacted by a toxic boss or a toxic coworker or toxic culture? And when we think about toxic workforces and leadership, I just want to be really clear. We're not talking about workplaces that are very demanding or demanding from the standpoint of, hey, we have a lot of deliverables due, deadlines. It's not workplace stress. So toxicity is not related to workplace stress, right? It's really about behaviors. And we're going to define some of those behaviors today. So I want to be really clear about that. Also, toxic, and when people talk about their leaders being toxic, this is not a new generation of workplace employees who are weak and whining. This is real stuff that impacts people's well-being, anxiety. They are impacted by, their well-being is attacked. And sometimes their dignity is under attack. And so I want to be really clear about that. Workplace, the difference between the two. And so our conversation today is really focused on being toxic leaders and having a toxic work culture and why that is so important. Because if you pull out your phones, and I do this exercise pretty often, you see me and my granny, you pull out your phones and go to your internet browser, or you go to on your computer, you pull up your internet browser, or maybe even go to ChatGPT and type in my manager is, my boss is, my company is. And some of the top words you'll find is toxic, micromanager, trying to kill me, doesn't like me. People are searching for solution to that phrase, my boss is. And so we coined the term untoxic boss because we believe that we're trying to eradicate this toxic leadership and this bad behavior at work. And so that's what this live is about. But as we get into today's topic, I want to make sure that we're clear, right? We're talking about empowering employees to speak up and breaking the silence against toxic leadership at work. Last week, we talked a lot about who's responsible for managing this. And we came up with like a trifecta, pretty much, right? All the employees are responsible, but also, our human resource department, we think should take a bigger role in helping managing culture, and definitely our executive leaders. And when we think about culture and toxic cultures, it's not about what you say you are. So culture is not about who you say you are, or what you say you are. It's not necessarily about the core values by themselves and having a list of core values and having them written on walls. Culture is about what you don't allow to have happen in your workplace. Right? So even growing up as a kid, family for us was not just about having dinner together every night. I grew up in a family where we ate dinner together pretty much every night, Monday through Friday, Sunday actually through Friday, if the kids weren't playing sports. But it was also about what we were not allowed to do, right? We were not allowed to treat each other badly. The kids couldn't go, we couldn't name call, right? So our culture was not just, hey, we sit down and eat dinner together, we're a family, but it was also, we sit down and eat dinner together and we do not use our words to destroy one another. And so that's the same thing about work. You create a culture by what you don't permit, what you don't allow. You don't allow this sort of behavior, and that's what keeps your culture rich. That's what defines what your culture is. And so I want you to think about that. And I want you to think about the things that are permissible in your workplace and say, you know what? That actually defines our culture. Because if we allow people to mistreat one another at work, then that is the culture that we're creating. We're creating a culture that is abusive. And so that might sound extreme to some of you, especially if you're responsible for managing culture, but that's really what it is. And I'm going to stand on that. And I want you to think about that some. When you, even with your friends, right, there are things that you don't permit to happen in your friend groups. Well, why don't we have that same sort of care at work with the people that we probably spend more time with than our friends? So when we think about addressing workplace toxicity and empowering employees to speak up, there's some crucial reasons why this is important. Employees need to be able to speak up, and we need to be able to address this and they need to feel empowered to address it. And the reasons why is just overall employee well-being, retention and engagement, productivity, reputation, and legal and ethic responsibilities, right? So employee well-being, we need to address it because work is stressful enough. Being a human is stressful enough. I shouldn't have to come to work and try to give my best intellectually, but my heart is being broken every day because of how people talk to me, the tone people use, or the requirements related to my job that is not equitable or equal to other people on the team or in the company. If I'm being required to do something that others are not being required to do, or held accountable for a behavior that others are not being held accountable for, then that's going to cause me to feel stressful, anxiety, and it's toxic, and it's going to impact my well-being. And so that's the other thing. A big part, retention is huge, right? The number of lost hours of productivity because I'm calling out sick because I don't feel like dealing with people. I'm taking a leave of absence because, it's just hard working here and I just need a freaking paid break that's more than my vacation time. And that's what people are doing. They're taking leaves of absence, and that's a big problem. Employee engagement. People don't give their best when they feel, once they disengage. It's not just burnout. It's, I don't like these people. These people don't like me. So I'm just going to check out. And so engagement is low. I don't volunteer to participate in things. We don't have a social component to work. And then that impacts my productivity. And so we have to encourage people to feel like they can speak up because it impacts collaboration. It also impacts innovation. The bottom line is the reputation of your company. You can go out to Glassdoor, Fishbowl, a lot of other apps where people are venting and, shining the light that this is a horrible place to work. This team is bad. This group is bad. This leader is horrible. And I'm going to sound the alarm. Hell, people are literally going to Twitter or X and other social media apps. They're not even doing it on job boards anymore. They're making it public and they're calling you out. And this is also, we're talking about work. I'm talking about universities, teams, all sorts of places where there's poor leadership. And I think the biggest reason that we want to address this is because the legal and ethical responsibilities and ramifications. And so I'm going to look here at my screen. I'm going to look away a little bit from the camera because I want to go to, I was watching the news the other day. How many of you watch the news? The bad news. I wish there was a station called The Good News that I could spend some time on, but watching the news, nightly local news. And unfortunately, this was the headline. It was an Atlanta story. Lawsuit against Atlanta Public Schools alleges bullying in employee relations department. I'm going to pause here because I need y'all in the chat window to write what? Yes. The place where people go to get support has a problem with toxic leadership, bullying, name calling, threats against its employees. And they're currently being sued. As a civil lawsuit was filed in federal court alleging bullying and harassment by the Atlanta Public Schools office in charge of investigating these kinds of complaints, employee relations department. So 2 women have filed a lawsuit against this and against their boss because they felt that they were retaliated against and bullied by their supervisor, who's named in this suit. It's also named in this article. I won't read this online. But they say that the very department that is supposed to be protecting the rights of employees in the Atlanta Public Schools was not protecting the rights of some of its own employees in the employee relations department. That is not only ironic, it is tragic. These employees are now filing a lawsuit in federal court, shining the light on this bullying. One incident that was named in the case was this particular leader told the people who are suing, the plaintiffs, that there was nothing they could do about it because the more senior person in the organization was a part of their sorority and they were sorority sisters. And so they endured a horrible, toxic leader. And this was permitted because the more senior professional in the organization allowed it to happen. 2 people have left their careers, and now the company, the Atlanta Public School System, and this not only the larger school system, but the particular department, employee relations, is now in the news, reputation, and I'm sure other employees are going to come forward. Now, that is the biggest issue with toxic workplaces. When it gets to the news and employees are suing because of the way they've been treated at work, not just discriminatory practices, but practices of bullying, harassment, micromanagement, favoritism, lack of accountability, unrealistic expectations, horrible, poor, or no communication, not or disrespectful communication, undermining and sabotaging, excessive workloads, retaliation, and no or lack of support. Everything that I've listed here is part of the reason why we have to make sure that our workplaces are free of toxic leaders. It's the bottom line, right? I'm an accountant, so I always throw in that accounting terminology. The bottom line is get rid of those people. I mean, do you agree or disagree? The list is like, that's all the things that were found in that suit. I read through that complaint, that federal complaint, and those were the things that I listed: bullying, harassment, discrimination, right? Micromanagement, favoritism, lack of accountability, unrealistic expectations, poor communication or no communication, undermining and sabotaging actions and behaviors, excessive workloads, right? So now they're being penalized for their work or work being taken away from them, retaliation, and no support or lack of support. Those are the things that we see that people are dealing with. Those are common elements of workplace toxicity, and we see them in that one case. Now, if I were to give you an assessment, and maybe we'll do that, we'll create an assessment on determining if your workplace is toxic or if you are a toxic boss. Maybe next week I'll drop it in the inside and we'll give you all an opportunity to complete it. And you can tell if you are a toxic boss or if you work for one. So you'll be able to do that. But, all of those things, they impact, mental health issues, lost wages, lost time from work. People start having these personal health problems, job satisfaction. And we know, I posted a quote earlier this week. People don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses. Typically, they leave toxic bosses. So, there's a lot of conflict and mistrust in the workplace. And we got to be able to empower people to do it before they file a federal or local lawsuit against you. We shouldn't be coming to work figuring out if we got an attorney on speed dial to answer our questions about how we're being treated at work. So what we want to do is help employees be able to speak up. But now we know that there are some reasons why people may not speak up, right? Just lack of support is one. I find oftentimes people are more comfortable complaining and talking about it rather than actually taking action and doing something about it. And I think that's kind of human nature, because you don't know if you have someone that's going to, or have many that will stand up and alongside of you, right? We have external pressures that impact us staying in bad jobs, right? We might have, financial reasons, family reasons, reputation reasons that we stay in some of these jobs and stay working for some of these companies that impact us not speaking up. But, sometimes it's just fear of retaliation, right? If I tell you that Terrible Tom is a toxic boss, then he may retaliate against me, take work away from me, start giving me bad performance reviews, telling untruthful things about me to other leaders and colleagues, block a promotion. Like, these are the things that happen at work. Like, when I say these things out loud, I'm always like in disbelief, but it happens, right? Job security, right? Concerns about the job security often deters employees from reporting toxicity. They fear that being a whistleblower may jeopardize their employment, their social standing, and especially if you're in a competitive market or you're in a niche space, you're worried if you'll be able to get a job, or maybe because the market is so small that you're in, that everybody knows everybody and people will start telling on you, talking about that you're not trustworthy, which leads me to the next one. The lack of trust are reasons why people don't speak up. And so the silence is really broken around toxic leadership because they don't trust their HR departments. They don't trust the executives. They feel like there's favoritism happening. So they've watched in the past that there has been inaction or insufficient action. and people don't speak up. They don't address that one person. One thing that I found, I don't like the blanket message. Like one person does something wrong. You probably have experienced this before. So, Jennine does something wrong, but everybody on the team gets reprimanded for her bad behavior, where actually Jennine should actually get reprimanded. She should be put on some sort of performance plan, given action steps that says, hey, we're going to be watching you and expected to have that behavior changed or just terminated for violating the company culture, right? Because when you do something that we don't tolerate, then you should be asked to leave. There's a power imbalance is the other thing, right? Haven't been at the company very long. I'm very junior in my role, or maybe I'm young in age. Although a lot of young people don't have a problem speaking up. I know a lot of 27-year-olds who will sound the alarm and then go leave the organization. Feeling isolated, right? People no longer wanting to spend time with you, or you're not being invited to be on teams and participate in things. So you feel ostracized because you've spoken up. There could be also like this emotional toll, right? Okay, I'm going to address this toxic behavior, but then I feel like it often requires me reliving this traumatic experience, right? I'm always having to share over and over about it. So that makes me feel as if, like I'm reliving it. So I'm playing this trauma over, which creates a form of post-traumatic stress related to it. And then I just don't know who to tell, right? So this lack of awareness and not knowing things and understanding the cultural norms, I don't know where to go. And then finally, back to Atlanta public schools, the people who are supposed to help me are also dealing with their own level of toxicity. So they aren't even in a position to feel empowered to give me a framework of what to do because they're dealing with the same crap at work. And so we got to be able to create a healthier workplace. And so I got 5 ways that maybe we can do this. And I just kind of want you to consider these and to check and see if your company has some way to do this, right? So how can you document these incidents? I believe in documentation. I mean, day, time, who said what, and where did it happen? I believe you need to document the things that are happening to you so that you can demonstrate and show a pattern of behavior from this particular person, this team, or in this group. Now, this is actually, documenting this, I think is really important, and just keeping it for your own personal records. Because sometimes we have to make sure that what we think is happening is really happening. Because sometimes we gaslight ourselves, like, oh, I was having a bad day, I hadn't been feeling well, or this was happening, I was having this issue, so maybe I'm overthinking this, or I'm being dramatic or emotional. And then the second part of gaslighting is somebody else is gaslighting us. But if you have the documentation, you can say, you know what, this happened last Tuesday. It's happened 3 times in February. I saw it, it came up again. It didn't just happen to me. I saw it happen to another colleague, right? And unfortunately, it takes time to document. So now think about this. We're talking about having people work at their highest capacity and be productive. But now they have to document, this kind of behavior at work. So now not only are they participating in the job, they're also having to write down what's going wrong. I think you got to have a real conversation with your leaders and speak up to your boss. And sometimes that conversation has to happen maybe away from the desk, right? Maybe it shouldn't happen in the office. Hey, yeah, can we walk down to the break room if you're back in the office? I really want to talk with you and just share with you privately and hope that we can have an honest conversation about how this sort of treatment at work impacts me, or when I see these things happening at work, I want to talk a little bit about and maybe get your opinion about how I can handle it so it doesn't sound so accusatory, because we know that most of us spend our lives reacting and in reactionary mode. And so we don't want them to get defensive and feel like they have to deny this sort of behavior is happening. So I think taking it from an inquiring minds want to know perspective, but we have to speak up. And if you feel as if it's going unaddressed and unacknowledged, then that's when you pull out, hey, I got a little documentation about this. This is when I've seen this happen and take place. And then understanding what the company's reporting channels are. Is there a process, a clearly defined process where I can report this and I know what will happen? I know that actions will be taken to address this issue, right? I'm not blowing the whistle because I'm trying to get people terminated. I'm blowing the whistle because of how this is impacting people at work and wanting to be able to have a conversation around that. Do you have trusted colleagues? I hope a lot of us have a place where we have colleagues or mentors in the workplace that we can talk to and they have experienced this or they witnessed this and they can give you some insight about how to address this at work. And I think utilizing our employee resource groups, right? It's a great way to bring this conversation up because most employee resource groups are designed for employees to have conversations about how they are impacted at work through the lens of their being. So, my being as a woman, my being as a Black professional or someone who identifies as Black or African American. If you identify as LGBTQIA plus, you can have, hey, I feel like because I'm queer, this is happening at work, right? You can start a sentence that way in these supportive groups that allow you to be able to have constructive conversations about this and then collectively take that information and that knowledge and have a conversation up the career ladder and go directly to HR, go directly to employee relations, go directly to one of the chief executives in the organization and say, you know what? We have overwhelmingly concluded based on conversations and data that we've collected that this is an issue for our community and we need to figure out how to address it. And I think not only just pointing out and shining the light on this, bringing suggestive ways that we can address this issue at work is important. Has any of your employee resource groups been utilized in that way? Do you utilize your employee resource groups that way, or are your employee resource groups just kind of event groups? Because a lot of them have turned into event groups, but they really should be designed as a first defense for employee well-being and be able to collectively bring that information together. And then I think, to a last resort, you might be forced to either leave that organization, because I don't believe you should stay anywhere where your well-being is suffering or where your mental health is under attack or where you are being challenged every day to do your job under duress, wondering where the next, little minefield is going to be. And if someone's going to throw a toxic grenade your way because of however they feel about you having the role, being in that role, it just shouldn't happen. And so we want to make sure that you have that. And I just think it's really important that you seek legal counsel, get professional counseling and therapy, have a supported friend or family network that can help you. I think what can be helpful is professional associations. Depending on your industry, professional associations may provide resources to support employees facing workplace issues like this. So I've been a member of professional associations for a long time, and some of them do have resources. One in particular, I'm a member of the Association of International Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA, and I serve on committees, and we design toolkits or suggest that toolkits be designed, and they get designed, and we use those with our member firms as ways to provide them with supportive resources on things that can help their employees have successful careers and help build cultures that are supportive. And so don't forget that there are a lot of resources out there. But employees, we have to break the silence. We have to be able to speak up where in organizations that the culture has a speak up, speak out culture, right? If we don't hear that people are speaking up about things that they notice and see and experience in the workplace, then we should be assessing that, right? On a regular basis, companies every year should have employee assessments and engagement assessments that ask the question, are you experiencing toxic leadership? They should define what toxic is. An employee should be able to identify yes, no, or rate it on some sort of scale, share a story, and we should get that data in a quantitative manner, but we should also get qualitative information. right? Hosting small group conversations that are free. People can say what they need to say. They're not retaliated against. Those stories and that information is used to support the quantitative data, and that information should be shared with everyone in the company, along with what are we going to do to fix it. So if your company has not recently done an employee engagement survey, you should make sure that you do one this year before the year is out. You should let employees know how that information is going to be used and that it is confidential. And you should also make sure that it asks questions about the levels and the impact of toxic leadership. You should make a list. Do you feel like you've been in meetings and people are belittled? Are they called out? Do you sense that there's a retaliation culture in this organization, right? Frame those questions so that people understand exactly what you want to know so that they can answer it and there is no ambiguity. So we hope that you can use some of this information to frame and create a framework in your organization where you can empower your employees to speak up. They can speak up freely and they can identify those toxic bosses, the areas in your culture that are toxic. Because our goal here at Everyday Lead, and my goal as an executive coach and leader of teams, is to create an untoxic work culture. And we do that by first, one person at a time, creating an untoxic boss who is a leader worth following. Thank you for joining us today on the Untoxic Boss. We want to introduce you a resource that we know that will impact your life and your career. It's a book, Unstuck and Unstoppable. It is the ultimate guide to overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. With practical tips and inspiring stories, the book will help you leverage your value, increase your visibility, and gain recognition to accelerate your career. Take action towards getting the career that you deserve. This book was named Best Career Book of 2022. Get your copy anywhere you buy books, either on Amazon or at our website at unstuckandunstoppablebook.com. Thank you for joining the Untoxic Boss Podcast today. We are here and on a mission to help people stop being a jerk at work. We'll see you here again next week.